Three Men and a Baby came out in 1987. Does it still hold up today? Is it secretly a delightful portrayal of a queer platonic relationship? Let's talk about it. Hey y'all, and welcome to my vlog. My name is Erin, and today we're going to be talking about Three Men and a Baby, as well as its sequel, Three Men and a Little Lady. This topic was requested by one of my patrons, Casey. She wanted me to analyze one of her favorite movies, so here we are. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring that bell so you always know when a new video is uploaded. I've got tons of bonus videos if you want to be in the know when those come out. Three Men and a Baby stars Tom Selleck, Ted Danson, and Steve Guttenberg, playing Peter, Jack, and Michael respectively. You've probably seen all of these actors in other things. Probably the most well-known today would be Ted Danson, who plays Michael in The Good Place. The basic premise of this movie is that there are three men living together in a New York City apartment. Jack's daughter is left on their doorstep while he's out of town, leaving Peter and Michael to take care of her. Most of the shenanigans outside of the baby revolve around a drug deal gone wrong, but the charming part of this movie for me is the relationship between these three leads and how they come together to take care of the baby. It starts off really trying to hammer home that these men are playboys. They hold big parties, sleep with lots of women, there's just mountains of objectification going on, and I mean, it's from the 80s, so I'm not faulting the movie for being a product of its time. I just find it mildly hilarious that the movie pushes this idea so hard. The first 12 minutes of the movie is just like an endless stream of all of the women that they have slept with or are attempting to sleep with, and it's basically the Wedding Crashers intro but with less boob. The thing is, while that is the narrative that the movie is trying to push, it really seems that their focused relationship is the three men having a queer platonic relationship. If you're not already familiar, queer platonic just means that there is a strong bond and an emotional connection beyond what society would typically expect of a friendship. A lot of society would expect that in a romantic relationship there is a long-term devotion, the people might live together at some point, may raise children together, and all of those things can be present in a queer platonic relationship. And that's what we end up seeing with the men in this movie. Queer platonic relationships also do not require anyone in the relationship itself to identify as queer. It's simply the name of this type of relationship that defies a lot of social norms. Peter, Jack, and Michael have clearly been living together for a long time now. They all have well-established, well-paying careers, so this is not a situation where they have roommates to afford it. They have a huge apartment that has reasonable space for all of them to work and live like they want to. And they also haven't gotten involved in any other permanent relationships. While they are still shown to have sexual and romantic relationships outside of the three of them, those relationships are shallow at best and none of them are long-term. The longest and most functional relationship that any of them have is their relationship with each other. I'm not entirely sure how old the characters themselves are meant to be, but the actors for Jack, Michael, and Peter are 40, 29, and 42 respectively. I am not an expert of romances in the 80s by any means, but those ages seem a little bit higher than you would expect for characters that haven't already been paired off. There's a very cute moment when Jack finally returns home and Peter and Michael just hand over the baby like a frazzled new parent when their partner has just gotten home from work. And although it seems at that moment that they're just gonna let Jack handle everything, they do come back together to take care of Mary. Let's talk for a moment about the big trope in this movie and how that would typically play out in a romance. The accidental baby acquisition is very commonly used in romances to bring romantic leads together. Characters have no choice but to come together because that kid needs functional humans to take care of it. While this does sometimes occur in an ensemble cast, such as we're seeing with this movie, it is much more common with romantic pairings. There's even the trope of the frantic airport dash that we would see in a lot of older romances. At the end of the movie, not only is the relationship between these three men stronger, but they've also become more mature as their priorities were forced to shift so that they could put Mary's needs above their own wants. At that point, we are also finally introduced to the baby's mother, Sylvia. She had intentions to return to England with Mary to get some help from her family to raise her. But the men, specifically Peter, don't like this idea and suggest that Sylvia and Mary simply move in with them and they'll all raise her together. This is not super typical behavior that you would expect from someone who has only been taking care of a baby for a short time. I posit that it's because Mary is Jack's biological daughter, and because Jack already has this strong queer platonic relationship with the other men, it only makes sense to them that Mary would function as their daughter as well. They would simply approach it in the same way that you would if you wanted to be an involved step-parent. Everyone raises the child, everyone loves the child, and you are a family. The sequel picks up pretty much from the end of the first movie. It came out 3 years afterwards in 1990, and the bulk of it is set 5 years in the future. Three Men and a Little Lady takes a springboard from the first movie and goes full romantic comedy. We begin with all of them buying a much larger home together so that Sylvia, Mary, and the three men have the space they need to grow comfortably in their family. We get a montage of them being a family together, their careers are stable, and they all seem to function as a proper set of legal guardians for Mary. They all weigh in on school choices, and they even all go to the same teacher interviews. Funnily enough, even though this very functional and multi-year-long queer-platonic relationship has been set up and well established, the movie still seems very afraid of the men being viewed as queer. At Mary's school, the people interviewing the family assume that the men are gay. And there's this whole moment of, no, we're not gay. We've slept with women. We've slept with so many women, definitely not gay. And I get it, it was 1990 and some people are very weird about that, but they put these characters in a functional four-way relationship and it's not that far-fetched of an assumption. As far as I'm aware, perpetual bachelors were often assumed to be gay, and they remained bachelors because they couldn't legally marry the person of their choosing. I almost wish that we could get a modern remake of this movie where everything is an explicitly queer polyamorous relationship with intermixing romantic relationships between the characters, but I'm not holding my breath. Mary accepts all of the men as her dads. She knows that Jack is her biological father, and the other two she calls her honorary dads. When Mary draws her family at the school, it surprises her teacher and confuses her classmates. She comes from a non-standard family, and this was often the narrative that was presented in a lot of cases for movies and TV shows in the 80s and 90s because of the rise of divorce, and so you had a lot more of single parents and people coming together to raise children. The most well-known that I can think of would be Full House, but in those cases the children referred to the additional parents as aunts or uncles, and in this case, all three are her dads. Sylvia, Mary's mother, has a deep platonic bond with all of the men, and she's been fully integrated into their family. While it is revealed that Peter is in love with Sylvia, it takes him 5 years to come to terms with this. And they've otherwise lived as a queer platonic quartet without really any regard for what society would dictate. In the sequel, both Sylvia and Michael have outside romantic relationships, although Michael's is kind of pushed off to the side and ignored in favor of the focus on Sylvia's because her boyfriend proposes, and that prompts her to consider moving to England with him and taking Mary, leaving the three men without their family unit. At this point, it's not that Sylvia feels like her romantic relationship is more important than the queer platonic one she has with the men. I think it's that she's feeling quite a bit of societal pressure. Additionally, she still wants to have more children, and she would like the security that comes with a legal marriage. Given the time period that this is set, I don't blame her one bit for wanting that security. She's worried that at some point they will all end up caving to societal pressure and abandoning the queer platonic relationship they've spent the last 5 years enjoying. If all of them did cave to that pressure, she would be left as a single mother without a support system, at least in her mind. She also presents the argument that her and Mary are simply holding back the men rather than enriching their lives. She believes that the men would be in very different places if not for her and Mary, but I don't think that's true, at least not given to anything that we see in the first movie. These are men in their 40s who are set in their ways with no big incentive to change. They are financially stable and they're just living their bachelor life. If they haven't gotten sick of it by their 40s, I don't see it changing in the next few years. Sylvia's quest for security with her current boyfriend Edward is what forces Peter to recognize that he has romantic feelings for her. It still takes him to the end of the movie to finally be fully honest about this, but the journey to that point also forces all of the men to really acknowledge what their family means to them. Michael in particular at this point has been kind of a butthole about his parenting responsibilities, but when faced with the possibility of losing Mary, he shapes up. And all of this is where the importance of communication is illustrated. Obviously, communication in any relationship is very important, but anyone who has been in a polyamorous relationship will tell you that communication is the absolute top priority. There are more people to balance, more feelings to take into consideration, more lives and futures and plans. And like with many rom-coms, communication is not at the top of the list here. If they had all talked about their concerns from the start, with Sylvia being honest about her worries and her need for security, Peter being honest with his feelings, and Michael being honest with his frustrations. And while I don't think Jack had too much to contribute to this conversation, he still could have been a supportive and sympathetic ear. We wouldn't have the movie that we do, but the characters would have had a healthier relationship. When Sylvia first expresses her desire to get married in general, the men start looking at their friend group to see who Sylvia might like, which is odd because I'm pretty sure they know that she's dating Edward, but don't consider him as a possibility for her getting married until like the end of the list. Their logic for pairing Sylvia up with one of their friends is that it will give them the closest approximation of what they have now. They're unlikely to be barred access by a jealous partner because that friend is going to know them, know their history. They're still going to have access to Sylvia and Mary. Of course, Peter vetoes all of these choices because he's in love with Sylvia, but we have to go through a whole series of shenanigans, an evil fiancé, a lustful schoolmistress who commits a sexual assault that's pushed aside for laughs, and a race to the church to object to the wedding. At the end of it all, Peter and Sylvia get married. I have no objection to this. They have a solid foundation together, they're good friends, it allows the queer platonic relationship with everyone to continue, and it still gives Sylvia that security she needs. Have you seen 3 Men and a Baby or the sequel 3 Men and a Little Lady? Let me know in the comments below what you thought of them or if you're thinking of watching them now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you would like a chance to request a video topic, check out my Patreon. We have a writing group, early access to content, chance to request a video topic, and also the opportunity to have me help hash out your story. Check out all my books if you like fantasy or romance. All of my social media links will be below. Subscribe and ring the bell, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!